Happy Sunday, everybody. Today I want to talk about gatekeeping because, well, I don't know how I came up with that this week, but suddenly it felt like something that I really needed to talk about. Um, and I will talk about it, sharing an experience of my own. So probably I think I was looking at my Amazon KDP dashboard when I realized I was being my own worst gatekeeper. So that's what I want to talk about today because for a lot of us who self-publish, one of the reasons to self-publish is so that we don't have to deal with the gatekeepers. Um, One of the discussions within the indie publishing world is that you have the gatekeepers, so the agents, the publishers, within traditional publishing, who then who are the persons to decide this is what people want to read and this is what people don't want to read. And of course, a massive debate within the indie publishing world is that readers want to read a lot more than the gatekeepers think they want to read. So if you think you have a story to tell that people want to read, want to have access to, and the traditional gatekeepers are trying to keep you out, that is actually how people started to do self-publishing because they believed in their own work, they believed in their own stories, and they wanted to prove the traditional gatekeepers wrong. And in the meantime, like the self-publishing industry has become massive. So yeah, there was definitely a point. Readers read a lot more than the gatekeepers think we do, because of course I'm one of those readers as well. So how did I came up with this particular? What did I want to talk about? The question whether you are your own worst gatekeeper. I think for me, so this some of the things you just learn by doing, right? So some of the things, a lot of things you just learn by living through it. And I'm gonna tell you, for those of you who saw my last video, I showed you the paperback version, the proof copy of my first book, my first nonfiction book, Get Out of Your Own Way. And I was really excited, but I am still excited about that. I gave the copy to the photographer to check whether the quality is what she wants it to be, so then so we can move forward with actually publishing it as a paperback. Funnily, so this book, Get Out of Your Own Way. I don't know if you've read it. It's a workbook, right? It's a challenge. It's a tarot challenge for writers, well, creatives in general. And so I did this first as an Instagram challenge, right? There's a lot of people doing Instagram challenges. It's every month there's more, and it becomes trickier to pick like which one am I gonna do. Um, so I never really wanted to be part of that because I mean there's quite a lot out there already. But I remember last year, so it was already last year. So let's say, I think it was actually last October when I first had the idea of doing a kind of a challenge on Instagram, but for writers, right? Specifically for writers or for creatives. And I didn't do it because I was like, a lot of people do it already. What do I know about tarot? People are really not waiting for me and my things. So I decided not to do it then. Then last spring, when I just moved to Cyprus, I had this moment, and I'm sure I've talked about this before. I had this moment. It was very rainy still. It was last winter. It was a very rainy winter for Cyprus. Um, so there was a lot of rain where I moved still. And I remember like it was nice out, right? It was like it was in the morning, and I was renting an Airbnb, and there was this nice little balcony, and in the morning you could sit in the sun. And even though it was still cold out, so I was wearing coats, my raincoat most of the time. On that little balcony, when the sun was out, it was lovely. Um, Up until like 11 a.m., right? Because then the sun moved away and it became quite cold in the house as well. So I also I wrote a lot using my laptop on that little balcony. And then one morning I woke up and I was like, oh yeah, I need to charge my laptop. But you know, I did my morning ritual, I did my yoga, I did my journaling, I did my cards. And when I was ready to go outside, I realized I'd forgotten to charge my laptop and it was like dead. Like there was no way it was gonna do anything. So I was like, damn it, because looking at my weather app, like it was gonna be a good day, and the next day was gonna be rainy. So was I gonna lose out on the sun because I had stuff to do. So I decided, you know what, I'm just gonna put my laptop inside, charge it, and I'm just gonna sit outside, take my notebook, sit there for half an hour, see what comes up. Well, that half an hour turned into slightly longer, but that's when I came up with the first challenge I ever did. That just came. Like I was just writing, and suddenly, before I knew it, I was like cutting little post-its, putting them in my planner, like rewriting, erasing, um, writing again, like trying to figure it out. Like, oh no, that doesn't belong on this day. This belongs on that day. So I was sort of like, it was like a big puzzle I was working on. It was lots of fun. Then, of course, was the should I even do this? Like, should I try this? Should I become part of this? Are people actually waiting for this? And people around me told me, just do it. Just do it. Let's see what happens. Well, I did the challenge on Instagram. I had a lot of fun. Like it was for me myself. It was very enlightening. Um, and the few people who joined me were also very positive. They were like, "Yeah, this is like this was very like the questions like they really made me rethink certain things, and some of the things were just I had no idea that that was the thing that was bothering me, or that I needed to look at it from this perspective. So it was such an eye opener. Still, that only made me think, nice, maybe I'll do another challenge, right? Um, But then I started dating this photographer. Um, and just by looking at her photographs, and of course, yeah, so when I started, so the challenge ended, and that's when we started dating. So the challenge, like all the questions, was still fresh in my head, right? So I started looking at her photographs, and I sort of felt like this sort of resonance between what I was seeing on the image and the questions that I'd been asking during the challenge. So at that moment, in that moment, I was thinking it would be really nice if we could like take those questions and then turn it into like just a little ebook thing, like just a few pages. But can I maybe I can see if I can find enough pictures that resonate with the questions so that we can make some sort of nice visual sort of manifestation of the challenge, right? And of course, I also read like I believe I mean I'm still dating her, and I believe she's very talented. So of course I also wanted to do something together, right? Like I wanted to create something together because that seemed like a really fun thing to do, like to make something together. Um, so yeah, that took me a little convincing before she was ready to say yes to the project. But that's basically why I turned it into a book in the first place. Not because I thought people were waiting for this, not because I thought the quality of the book was so sublime, like it had to be out there. No, I just felt like creating something together with this new person that I was just getting to know and who I consider very talented. That's how we ended up making the book together. So funnily, of course, when I put it out there, that it took me a while to put it out there, and I know part of that was because there's quite a few pictures involved, so some of them needed to be like improved a little bit, like pixel wise, to make sure that they looked okay. So that of course has a bit more labor than just throwing a book together. Even though like just throwing a book together, that's not a thing either. But just because we had so many visuals, it needed a bit more work. And I realized every time she was like, "I need a bit more time for this picture. Is that okay?" So she was very apologetic about it. Like she was like, "I'm so sorry. Like if we keep pushing back the deadline, are you okay with this?" And I just like, "Yeah, no, it's fine. This book really doesn't have a deadline. It's fine. It's fine." Um, and when I came to Edinburgh in July, August for the 20 Books to 50K conference, I still had that in my head, right? Like this is gonna be this fun project, and it will be done when it will be done. And in the meantime, I started working on another project with like tarot spreads, and I was thinking I will make that book and I will add something to it because I thought, just publishing a few tarot spreads like as a book together, that's not gonna be nobody's gonna need that. So let's not do that. Um, so yeah, that's something I started working on during the conference. But then, of course, I started talking to people. I did a lot of card readings for people at the conference. So we started talking about my project and my books, and they were all so excited. And they were all like, "You need to publish this. Like, come on. Like, you need to stop making excuses." And then I realized I was making excuses. Like, I was so relaxed about. I was very relaxed. Like, I was like, the deadline doesn't matter. Like, it's just a fun project. But yeah, that was also an excuse not to put myself out there because what if nobody was waiting for this? So of course, that is when I started to take myself seriously, which was, the people at the 20 Books to 50K conference in Edinburgh were a great help there for me taking that step of being like, okay, so I actually have something here. I should do something with it, not just as let's just play around and see what it does, but like just take myself seriously and just put it out there. And that's when I started to speed things up about that first book and also the second book because I published both of them within the a span of 2 weeks. And that's still thinking for me like that the challenge one was like this because there was another reason I didn't really think I could put it out there and ask money for it because it was a free challenge. So if people wanted to do it, they would just go to my Instagram, right? They could just do the challenge there. That's one other thing, one other excuse that I was making up to not publish the book, right? So yeah, fast forward. I published that book. I published another book with spreads for writers and creatives. I'm now in the middle of another challenge. Now, immediately, I'm not gonna I'm not gonna sit still and wait and give myself excuses. The book will be published the day after the challenge ends, so that will be the 1st of November. But why did I start speeding things up? For myself, so in my process. So instead of doing the challenge and then wait 3 months to finally publish the book, which is really not, putting a book together is labor, but these are just small little ebooks, right? Like booklets. So it's not that big a deal. Like I can do that in quite a short amount of time. So why did it take me so long? Well, like I said before, I didn't think people were actually waiting for anything like it, right? But so why I wanted to talk about this thing, about this being your own gatekeeper. Funnily, Get Out of Your Own Way is the book that I've sold the most copies of ever since publishing it. So even the books I published before that, which are not in my name, which are in a pen name, have not sold, and it's priced the same, have not sold the same amount of copies as Get Out of Your Own Way. So that tells me something. That tells me that even though the challenge is free on Instagram and it's out there, right? If you look through the book, the first few pages, I'm very honest about that. Like you can do this thing for free. It's on my Instagram page. Even besides, even even so, people buy this book. And for me, that made me that was one of those moments, like realizing that, and I keep realizing every time I get into my KB dashboard, I'm like, really, seriously? But yeah, it makes it. That's my point. The point that I wanted to make today is every time I open that KDP dashboard, I'm like I don't know what people want to read. I don't know what people want to buy. I just know what I want to make, and I wanted to make this book, and people are buying it. So does that mean that I'm putting out the next book because I think it's going to be as successful as the first book? I don't know about that. But I know that doing the challenge, creating it into an ebook and into a paperback, for me, that's a lot of amount. Like I love that part, right? I love that whole I make these in Canva, and once I figured that out, like I love doing it. Like I just spent half this morning just fiddling around on Canva, just like changing things. I love doing it. So why not just do it? Like I don't know if it's going to be as successful as the other one, but I loved making the challenge that I'm doing now. I love putting the books together. So let's just put it out there. But for the longest time, I didn't want to do that because I assumed that nobody wanted to read what I was doing. Nobody wanted to work, because like I said, these are workbooks, right? Nobody wanted to work with what I was doing. Finally, this is the question that when we talk about traditional publishing, we say, like, how the fuck do they know what people want to read? Well, the same goes for me. How the fuck do I know what people want to read? Like, what do I know what people want to buy and want to invest in? What people think are like are useful investments for their own creative development, so to speak. I mean, that's what my books are about, right? They're all about author mindset and creative mindset, and figuring out where you are in your own way, how to fix that, what your obstacles are, what your strengths are. That's very much my line of work. So instead of just asking that question about other people, about the official gatekeepers, can you also ask a question about yourself? Like, when you look at your own work, all the stuff that's not out there yet, all the stuff you've been working on, and like for me, I have a 14 projects on the back burner, and I can honestly say for most of them, I feel it's both, right? Part of them are, I don't know if people want to read this, right? That should not be the most important thing. The most important thing is whether I want to write it. If I want to write it, I should just write it and then put it out there and see what happens. That is the luxury of self-publishing. You can just put it out there and see what happens. If nothing happens, if you sell one copy, but maybe you will sell much more. Maybe you will sell copies you could not even imagine selling. And the other half for me would be, who am I to say these things about these topics? And that's a completely different topic, and I will go into that, like the whole validation and calling yourself an expert. That's a completely different topic, and that needs a different video. But yeah, would you do that? Just sit with yourself for a little bit, sit with your projects, look at what you're working on, and ask yourself that question. Are you being your own worst gatekeeper? Are you holding back in whatever way? Are you working on a project you don't actually want to be working on, but you're working on it because you think this is what people want to read? Or maybe you are working on that one project that you don't think people want to read, but you need to write it, and you keep making excuses not to put it out there, or not to send it to beta readers, because what if they prove you right? What if they all hate it? Just try and sit with that question for a little bit, and look at the stuff you're working on. And if that comes up, like if that question comes in your like pops up in your head when you look at your work, like, why would people want to read this? Just try to change that for, well, why won't they want to read this? It's not up to us, the writers, to determine or to decide what people want to read, right? If you want to write it, chances are there are people out there who want to read it, even if that's just one person. If you want to write it, write it. That is so much more important than knowing on beforehand whether or not your book is going to be read. If you really want to read this, if you really want to write this, there will be a readership. Maybe it's a small readership, but there will be a readership. So try and trust that, and stop being in your own way. Stop closing the gate for yourself, and just throw it wide open and write whatever you want to write, because you really don't have anything to lose, do you? Thank you for watching, listening, and I'll see you soon. I'll see you this Wednesday when I'll be talking with Bradley Charbonneau on writing with kids. It's another heart-to-heart. So join us. See you then. Have a great Sunday.